With the latest agriculture news from across the state and nation, it's time for the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. Here's your host, Sabrina Halvorson.
Good morning. Thanks for tuning in this morning to the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson here with Lorrie.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, so things have gotten really heavy around the nation lately, and we've been discussing quite a bit of it. But today we decided we wanted to talk about something a little lighter and a little more fun. And of course, what do we go to when we want light and fun, Lori?
Usually some sort of adult beverage.
Yes, and today it's wine. So we're starting out the morning with wine. I mean, why not, right? Or wine not?
There you
So, so there is actual value to this conversation, though. You know, we were reading an article, and this is in an online magazine called 750 Daily, and it is the business and culture of drinks is the magazine. So, 750 Daily is reporting that it is a breakthrough year for low alcohol wines. So, the no and low alcohol wine market. So, this is, an opportunity for people who don't want alcohol to still be able to enjoy wine. And I have to say, I've tried some no alcohol wines, and frankly, the ones that I have tried, I tried once, and there's a reason for that. But it's been a few years, and this report is talking about how the popularity of the non-alcohol market has grown so much in recent years that winemakers have really stepped up their game to improve these low and no alcohol wines.
Yeah, I have actually reported on this here off and on, maybe for the last year, a year and a half, that the newer generations, millennials and others, Generation Z, are not really drinking wine for a few reasons. And from what I can tell, just kind of on reporting this, and even I've got millennials, like they're not into wine at all. The one of my kids doesn't drink, and that's what we're going to be talking about here today. And then the other one, he prefers beer or other types of spirits. So it is interesting that wine is kind of getting that. I don't know if it's a reputation thing or exactly what it is that is turning people from not drinking wine. I also mentioned to you before we started our recording here today that I have a very good friend who owns a liquor store, and wine sales are down. We have a local winery, and he carries some of those wines. Those are up, but I think that that's an effort to want to support our local agriculture and our local industry, I would guess. But I think that newer generations, just based on me having millennials and being around them, they're just not into drinking as much, period, when it comes to alcohol.
Right. And I would say that that's maybe a good thing. Alcohol can be a problem substance, and we recognize that. But so the idea of creating these low and no alcohol wines, helps match that market so that you can still enjoy the flavor of wines without without the alcohol. And that shift, with focusing on improving those flavors, has helped to bring that market, more success, because it was not a successful market a few years ago. But again, like I said, the wines, these no alcohol wines, several years ago, they were, at least the ones that I tried, and I tried maybe 4 different kinds, experimenting with this, trying to, see what that market was all about, and they just were not the same as wine. And I do enjoy wine. I mean, I hail from California, so of course I have to I have to know wine, right? It's got to meet the stereotype. But the new, now they're realizing that consumers want not just the low or no alcohol label. They want a product that's actually really good. And so even in France, which of course France is known for wine, but wineries in France are focusing on creating a high quality no alcohol wine. And I think that's going to really bring a shift.
Yeah, because when you think about wine, and I'm a wine drinker myself, and I admittedly have not tried an alcohol-free wine. I've tried the skinny wines that are supposed to be less sugar. Yeah,
Hmm.
don't love them either. But but I've not actually tried the alcohol-free kind of wine. But I am a wine drinker. I like all kinds of different wines. But anyway, what was I going to say about that? I lost my thought on that for sure when I was bringing that part up. But it is interesting to me that when you think of wine, and I talk to the younger folks, they think of it more as a, I'm using this term sparingly, as an older person type drink. And when
Yeah,
we think about wine, I mean, even you and I, we're social people drinking it socially. We don't just
right,
kick back on a couch and guzzle wine.
right.
So it's a social type of drink. And so people who are not drinking alcohol for various reasons are wanting to still engage in social activities and still be out there. So this is a way for them to feel included, to feel like they're, being a part of the group, have fancy glasses because we know it's all about the glass, and
Mhm.
and being a part of everything without having to worry about, what are they going to drink when they get there besides apple juice.
Right, exactly. And it's good to have something that can be in that place so that you can if you are a non-alcohol person for whatever reason and you're going to a social situation, it's nice to have that opportunity to have something. Like you said, you don't want to be the person drinking juice while everybody else is having wine. Um, the de-alcoholization process, that's an actual word. The way that they do this, they're not like, from what I'm understanding, it's not that they are, they don't have, you make your regular wine and then you take it to this facility that then de-alcoholizes it.
Right.
Again, that's a real word. They put it through this process that removes the alcohol. So it goes through all of the regular processes that the wine goes through, the aging and fermenting and things like that, everything that wine goes through. And then after that, they take it to different facilities where it removes the alcohol from the wine. And I think that they have been improving that process to make these wines better because like going back again, the ones that I tried again, they were just they were watery, they were lacking in flavor. So I can see how talking about this process that they're going through now, where they're creating these beautiful full-bodied or full flavored wines and then removing the alcohol, that will maintain some of the integrity of the wine.
Yeah. That is interesting. That'd be kind of neat to go and see that process.
Yeah, it would. It really would. We need to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll look at some of the places where this process is happening. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
We're talking today about low and no alcohol wine. So for people who enjoy wine like Lorrie and I do, this is an opportunity to have wine that does not have the alcohol. So we were talking before the break about the de-alcoholization process. And looking in over in Europe, there are places where they have these facilities where winemakers can take their wine to these facilities and they will de-alcoholize them. And there's a facility in France, and also I was reading about a facility in Germany that has actually been the leading facility for this. In fact, this article that brought on this conversation, it's an article in 750 Daily, says that Germany has long been a world leader in the no and low alcohol wine production, but France has recently really moved into the forefront. So France is taking over here, and of course, when you think wine, if you don't think California, you're thinking France, right?
Mhm.
And to have, I don't know, I think it brings a little more legitimacy to the no alcohol wine market just to have it like you're talking about. It's wine from Bordeaux, in fact, that is now going through this de-alcoholization in a facility in Bordeaux, and Bordeaux synonymous with good quality wines. It's a good opportunity, and for whatever reason, there are a lot of reasons why people choose not to have alcohol, but to still have wine available to them, I see a win.
Absolutely. And it's cool that these companies are shifting that way and meeting that consumer demand. In order to stay in business, they have to. And not only that, but just with all these wildfires and such, it makes
Mhm.
me wonder how much wine will be on the market in general, just coupled with this conversation. It makes me wonder if there will be a shortage of grapes, which will lead to a shortage of wine, which might make it more appealing then, because people always want what they can't have. Some of the reasons that I saw, not that this is a big deal, but I'm always curious. I want to know why. The main reasons I'm seeing is first off that, as I mentioned, a lot of people view it as a more traditional or older type drink for people baby boomers or such. Another reason is health reasons. There is a lot of people who are not consuming. I have a lot in my own circles than alcohol at all because they're on some sort of fitness journey or maybe just health related or medications they're taking. And then also in this one, I'm just going to paraphrase. I don't really have a source other than conversations I've heard with local community leaders is that alcoholism is such a prevalent disease, especially amongst rural communities. I don't really have any facts or figures to back that up, but I have leaders that have told me this before in the healthcare industry and in general when it comes to social issues in rural areas. Alcoholism is a legit thing. It's a big thing. And so a lot of these younger generations have wisened up and they're breaking that cycle and not going into that after they've seen others that have alcoholism disease issues or some of these folks that served in a war and come back and are self-medicating, things like that. And so I think that's an interesting way to look at that. But anyway, so they're not choosing the alcohol for some of those reasons. And then of course, visiting with our local winery owners, a lot of times they have people come in, women that are pregnant, and so they want to offer an alternative, or people in rural areas who are driving long distances, everything's so far away and they can't really partake too much. So there's options for them as well.
Yeah, and it's nice to have those options available because, like you said, especially, when you're doing a wine tour or something, if you have somebody who is the designated driver, it's nice that
Right.
if they can maybe participate in some way as well while remaining clear of alcohol. I certainly don't support drunk driving in any
Right.
sense at all. I'm very much against it. So if you have, but it's nice to not have to have, I'm just as good with a Diet Pepsi. Not everybody is, and it's nice to be able to have something that's wine similar while everybody
Uh-huh.
else is enjoying wine. So that's a good option to have too. I think that this could open more doors for consumers as well as for wine businesses too. We do need to take another break, but we're going to keep chatting when we get back. And we're going to talk a little bit about citrus this morning as well. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
We have been talking about wine this morning, but we're going to switch over and talk a bit about citrus. Another article that we were reading this morning, and this coming from Fresh Plaza, saying a softer export season for California citrus. Easy for me to say, right? Looking at the citrus season, and specifically California citrus, we're talking a little bit about navel oranges, some grapefruit, mandarins, pretty much similar season to last year, but one farmer is saying that he's noticing the size of the actual fruit is smaller.
As a matter of fact, he's saying it's about half the size of last season, so considerably smaller.
Yeah. So the same amount of fruit, the same numbers, the same
Mhm.
pounds, crates of fruit, but the individual fruit is smaller. And he's saying that it could be because of a heat blast that we had over the summer last year. So that heat wave at just the right or wrong time in the growth cycle caused the fruit to be a little bit smaller. I think though that when that fruit ends up finally to the consumer, if you're thinking as strictly a consumer now, Lori, when you're buying fruit, do you go for does it matter to you if the fruit's a little bit smaller?
No, it really
Yeah.
doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but it might. I would think that the cost wouldn't be the same. That all the way back to what the farmers are able to sell for would be less than for larger fruit.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure how that works, and I guess I haven't really thought too hard about that when I buy fruit because I do like oranges a lot, and so I buy them quite often. In this article is interesting. The most recent oranges I did buy, and they were from California, they were actually pretty big, and I was thinking about that. I'm like, they're actually pretty good size. So maybe it's just parts of the state that have really had that heat damage affect their crops.
Right. Or they could have been last season's oranges that have been
That's true.
kept frozen
Yeah,
or in cold storage too. And another thing that was pointed out in this article is that one option for citrus growers is, especially orange growers, is that if they're not going to get a good price for the fresh fruit, you do have the option also of selling for juice. And there could be, in the article, it mentions that juice prices this year are historically high. And one of the reasons I think for that, and it's something that I've been saying, the hurricanes in Florida over last summer wiped out a lot of citrus. So that's going to cause, and citrus is more of the juice, or excuse me, Florida citrus is more of juice citrus. Their oranges go more to juice, whereas California oranges go more for the fresh market. But at least in California, you do have the option, if it's not going to work for fresh market, you can sell it for juice. With the lesser supplies from Florida for juice oranges, that does leave a bit of a gap for California citrus growers. But I believe you don't get paid as much normally for juice as you do for fresh. Fresh usually will get you a higher price.
Yeah. I guess I don't know a whole lot about that side of things. I don't cover that quite as heavily, so I don't know how that all looks and what that supply looks like and what makes for good oranges that translate into juice. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with sweetness, and it has to have the right sugar content for it to be a good juice orange. But then also, if you think about it too, juice oranges don't have to be pretty. And
Oh,
so, and size doesn't matter, as we always say. And so you can get away with a little bit more in your oranges than you can. Again, going to the fresh market oranges, consumers are still picky. I think that probably we're getting more used to produce that doesn't all look the same, but when you're at the grocery store, consumers are a little bit more picky about their fresh produce. And so the fresh oranges, they've got to look a little more uniform. They need to all be the right color of orange. The more orange, the more likely they are to sell quickly. And they have to be a little bit more pleasing. So if you have oranges that aren't, for whatever reason, you do have the option of it going for juice. And but then also, in addition to obviously the hurricane problems that Florida has seen, Florida for many years now has been dealing with Wong Long Bing or citrus greening disease. And when you have that, that turns your oranges or your any citrus, if they have citrus greening, it's called citrus greening because the orange will literally turn green, but which on the outside doesn't matter, but inside it's turning very bitter. And so that can make it, you don't want to eat a bitter orange. It becomes unedible. It's not going to hurt you by any means. It's just not going to taste good. In addition to, I just truly feel for Florida citrus growers because they go through so much. But with the Wong Long Bing, that has been going on for at least, I don't know, 20 years maybe in Florida. I think we've been worrying about it for 10 or so in California. But in addition to dealing with citrus greening that has wiped out many citrus groves in Florida, and then of course the hurricanes this year or this last year, I guess now, 2024 being an exceptionally bad year for hurricanes. So that has left a gap in the orange juice market. That is something California growers can help fill. However, it works better for them to sell for fresh if they can.
sure, sure. I didn't realize, and not till not too long ago, how many oranges from California are actually exported. I found another article here, seecalifornia.com, where it talks about some stats here. California oranges are the sixth most valuable export citrus, with the bulk of it going to Canada, South Korea, China, and Japan.
Yeah. Isn't that
Wow.
interesting?
Yeah, it's very interesting. 90%. Oh, never mind. That's a different stat. But yeah, it's a very exportable citrus. I think it has a longer shelf life when we're talking about perishable goods. Even as you mentioned, maybe I got some of last season's oranges here last time I bought them just a few days ago. And then here's another little tidbit. You probably already knew this, but Valencia and Navel are the top two types of oranges in California.
Yes. Yeah. And you know what? I have to tell you, there's just nothing like California citrus. It honestly is the best. And on that very biased note, we're going to take a break. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back. This segment is brought to you by Agro Liquid. We're talking today with Dylan Rogers, the sales account manager for California. So let's talk a little bit about why it's important to understand nutrient interactions.
Most definitely. So, like that situation you would see with calcium and phosphorus in a spray tank, the same type of stuff is happening in the soil that you can't see. So, that earlier we talked about how important soil samples were to take, and it is important to look at those soil samples and understand how some of those nutrients are reacting with each other in the soil. You may pull a soil sample and be real sufficient in a couple of nutrients, but it may be harming you with other nutrients. If you've got, say you've got too much calcium in the soil, it's going to tie up any phosphorus you put on, and things of that nature. One thing that I like to look at, especially here in California, we deal with a lot of salty irrigation water and salty ground, base saturation, sodium and potassium. If you've got a soil that's got really high base saturation sodium and it's out competing the potassium that's in the soil, those two ions are what we call lookalike ions. So when you get your irrigation water out, if you've got more sodium in that water than you do potassium, the plant cannot tell the difference between the two, and it's going to take up the sodium instead of the potassium, causing leaf burn and crop injury. So understanding how some of those interactions work in the soil, it's important, and we're happy to help however we can. Reach out to one of the sales guys, reach out to our agronomist. They'll be happy to sit down and go through your soil samples with you.
You can get more information at agroliquid.com. We're talking now about California's citrus and, frankly, how much I enjoy it, but also some marketing opportunities and how good exports are. The export market for California citrus, there is still a lot of opportunities for California citrus. Honestly, again, I recognize my bias, I admit it, but honestly, citrus grown in California is very flavorful.
There was a time when California was called citrus was king. Citrus is king.
Yeah. Yes. Isn't it? And that's interesting too.
Uh-huh.
I have enjoyed seeing the ways that produce trends and growing trends in California shifts from one citrus is king all the way back, gosh, going back to the 80s when I was a kid and the California raisins were everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and raisins were the big thing back in the 80s. You couldn't go anywhere in California without seeing the California raisins. I went as a child. I won tickets from my local radio station and went to the California Raisins movie sometime in the 1980s. I hope some of our listeners out there will remember what I am talking about. I know I am ancient, but it was like 1985-ish. I think I was around 10. And they did this like animated stop motion animation type thing with these California raisins. And they sang the I Heard It Through the Grapevine song. That's all I remember about it. I don't remember anything else.
I can't say as I remember that at all. I know the song though.
Yeah, it was probably just a big thing in California. I don't know. But back to my point, I know I'm digressing here, but it's really interesting to me to watch the trends and to see how over the years, and it takes a lot of years because citrus, raisins, almonds, those are things that you don't just plant one year and then get your crop the next year. These things take time. That's why they're called permanent crops. But to see the difference back, like I said, in the 80s, mid 80s, we were all talking about the raisins, and at least where I'm from in Central California. And then Dara, California, and the olives, huge olive crop. And then to watch that shift, and then into the 90s where we had a little bit more, it was that was the citrus. Everybody was talking about citrus. And then in the 2000s, it was all about almonds and tree nuts and things. So I love watching that progression of crop trends through California. And then, of course, over in the Central Coast, you always have your vegetables and then your wines and things like that, too. So I don't know. I'm a little bit of a California ag nerd.
So I'm getting hungry listening to you talk about all these things.
Is it breakfast time?
But when you were talking about the nuts and the fruit particularly, so I just ran a story here just a couple days ago, too, about the increase in the amount of dried fruits and nuts that are being sold. A lot of it because we lead very busy lives and people want an on-the-go snack and for health reasons.
Yes. Yeah, I have to tell you, since I came back from the almond conference in December, I've really, because I listened to so many nutritional experts speak at that, I've really tried to shift how I'm eating and how I'm snacking. It's difficult because I live with a junk food addict. My my husband, who naturally has a wonderful metabolism that I'm extremely jealous of. But I have shifted to buying a lot of tree nuts and seeds and a lot of legumes and things after listening to all these health experts and nutritionists. I have to tell you, Lori, I've lost almost 15 pounds.
Great. That's very cool. Yeah.
Not that we're going to turn this into a diet talk, but these nutritionalists who have studied this for many decades actually know what they're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, that's good news. That goes to show when you clean up your eating. Yeah.
Yeah, it's painful. I'm still going to enjoy the wine that we were talking about in the first segment, though.
Does. Yeah. Dry wines have less sugar, so there's
Our
good for
health
the
tip.
day.
There's our health tip for the day. Dry wines have less sugar. There we go. And folks, if you could see Lorrie Boyer, you would absolutely take her health advice.
Oh, I don't know about that.
All right, it is time for us to take another quick break, so we are going to do that. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. She's Lorrie Boyer. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halvorson.
A rural and ag upbringing is what Brooke Rollins brings to her new cabinet-level post, now serving the Trump administration for a second time, yet in a different role of Agriculture Secretary. Rod Bain looks at influences that shaped the new secretary in her own words in this edition of Agriculture USA.
The nation's 33rd Secretary of Agriculture, now leading the People's Department.
All Americans are important, but the farmer is the American important to all Americans. Abraham Lincoln understood agriculture to be fundamentally the business of the people in ways no other concern of government was or could be. We will ensure that American agriculture feeds all America and the world besides.
I'm Rod Bain. And coming up, Brooke Rollins, in her own words, in this edition of Agriculture USA. Just before the President's Day weekend, on the patio at USDA headquarters and virtually, Texas's Brooke Rollins, welcomed by USDA officials, staff, and dignitaries the day after her U.S. Senate confirmation vote.
The yeas are 72, the nays are 28, and the nomination of Brooke Rollins is confirmed.
And her swearing-in ceremony as Agriculture Secretary, the 33rd person in the department's storied history and the second woman to hold the position of Secretary. Through her presidential appointment, confirmation process, and arrival at the USDA complex in Washington, D.C., becoming more evident to the public was her rural roots. Experience in the nation's capital was highlighted by her role as Domestic Policy Council Director in the first Trump administration, a position where her rural and ag background and expertise provided a voice on rural concerns.
Growing up in the small ag town of Glen Rose, Texas, population then 1,200 people, is where my story begins. Then my world revolved around the future farmers of America, 4-H, and the endless cycle of baling hay, livestock shows, and rodeos that still today constitute the calendar of our small corner of Texas.
Yet the farm experience of her youth also included helping with a family row crop ag operation in Minnesota, one where corn, soybeans, and potatoes were produced. An alum of the Texas State University system, she is both an Aggie, Texas A&M University Aggie, that is.
On an agriculture scholarship where I studied and majored in ag leadership and development.
And a Longhorn.
The University of Texas Law School, where I graduated with honors and performed a federal judicial clerkship. And then to helm the policy shop of Texas Governor Rick Perry. It was there that I had my first direct leadership role in state ag policy.
Followed by a role as head of the Texas Public Policy Foundation, a Lone Star State-based think tank.
We engaged strongly during those 15 years with Texas rural and small town communities, giving them a voice in government that was too often denied.
Secretary Rollins acknowledges her arrival as the country's top ag official comes at a time of challenge.
American agriculture is in its worst economic straits in nearly a century, with grave challenges on prices, on markets, and on labor intersecting all at the same time. There is a great conversation underway among the American people about agriculture, food, and health.
Some of those challenges and conversations she shared during her Senate confirmation hearing in January.
We must ensure that the disaster and economic assistance authorized by Congress is deployed as quickly and as efficiently as possible. We must work with the great men and women of USDA, the stakeholder communities, and state leaders to immediately and comprehensively get a handle on the state of animal disease outbreaks. economics.
The Secretary admits the types of conversations producers and consumers are having about various farm and food sector issues are unavoidable, and regarding USDA should not be avoided.
We will be at the center of both, and we will meet them both with professionalism and patriotism that is the foundation of this department and our mission together.
The approach of the new Agriculture Secretary is one grounded in faith and various passions. One such passion, the connection of history and agriculture in our nation, including the history of the People's Department.
There is great purpose and deep history underlying our work, and it is our North Star.
Another is youth agriculture and the experiences and opportunities provided to rural youth to create their own success stories and contributions to society, much like Brooke Rollins and her own career and service path. This has been Agriculture USA. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This is the AgNet News Hour. We'll be back in just a moment. We're wrapping up the day today with a look at the latest agriculture news. As farmers look in the rearview mirror at the season just completed, they have concerns about the planting season ahead. Here's Mike Davis.
Zach Webb is a technical agronomist with Delta Pine in North and South Carolina. And at farmers' meetings he's attended, he's hearing a lot.
The biggest thing is, what are we going to plant to try to not only make money, but just to stay in business for another year? Because commodity prices are pretty tough right now. The acre shifts are jumping all over the place. We're seeing cotton down a little bit and beans and corn maybe up a little bit. But honestly, most of the guys are saying, you know what, I'm just going to plant what I normally plant to some degree and do what I know how to do.
Webb says farmers are telling him they're willing to give the new Trump administration time to make necessary changes, and they'll hold on if they can.
I was with some growers yesterday. They were talking about the reductions of how many 280 million or billion or something anyhow to the farm bill stuff, and they were concerned about it. And I said, wait a minute now, read the whole article. I said, because a lot of that's going to be directed toward food stamps and things like that. I mean, honestly, I think most of these guys realize that this first year is going to be tough, whether it's tariffs or whatever, or reduction in spending and things like that. But I think they also realize that it's going to take us a year or two to get to where we need to be and to fix some problems that we've had.
And farmers are telling Webb they expect a hard road in 2025.
I think the reality of it is, I think most of those guys are at the point where, it's kind of like you got to have a stick in your hand because you can't be the open door to everybody. At some point in time, you got to draw the line in the sand and say enough's enough. And I think they realize that's what's going to have to happen for things. Things got to get worse before they can get better. It's kind of what I'm hearing.
The old saying is that it's darkest just before dawn, and farmers hope that's a glimmer of morning they see on the horizon. I'm Mike Davis.
Several ag state lawmakers are trying to save the 70-year-old Food for Peace program, a possible casualty of President Trump's dismantling of USAID. Food for Peace, signed into law by President Eisenhower and championed by Senator Bob Dole, both of Kansas, is now in question. That as the president moves to dismantle the agency running it. Looking to save Food for Peace, Kansas Senator Jerry Moran has teamed up with other ag state lawmakers on new legislation.
To move Food for Peace from the turbulent USAID program and move it to the Department of Agriculture in an effort to prevent waste and bring the program closer to farmers that depend upon it.
The program bought more than $700 million of U.S.-grown farm goods in fiscal year 2023 alone. Moran says that USDA is best equipped to take over Food for Peace.
USDA has boots on the ground and the infrastructure already in place to support the logistics for food assistance. The agency understands how to move crops efficiently, sustainably, and quickly. This knowledge is indispensable when responding to international crises, where speed and reliability can mean the difference between life and death.
The program has fed more than 4 billion people in 50-plus countries with U.S.-grown food since 1954, while helping to keep farmers afloat.
We produce more than we can consume in this nation, so without programs to export to, our ability to make a living in agriculture in Kansas and across the country disappears.
The food aid bill and billions in approved economic aid could be crucial to help farmers survive the new headwinds of grant freezes, staff and services cuts, and another possible tariff war. National Crop Insurance Services is committed to a stronger farm safety net, they say. Chad Smith has more.
Crop insurers recently attended the industry's annual convention in Florida, where they committed to building on the success of crop insurance to strengthen the farm safety net. Scott Arnold is the chair of National Crop Insurance Services and president of Rain and Hail.
There's been significant growth in the crop insurance industry over the last 40 years. There are more products and policies available for farmers than ever before. More livelihoods are protected and more acres insured. Crop insurance protects in excess of 540 million acres and provides over $200 billion in protection. That's more than a 60% increase in protected acres in just the last 5 years.
The scale and size of today's crop insurance program demonstrate that farmers have come to rely on the crop insurance industry when the going gets tough.
Since 2019, crop insurers have made loss payments of more than $65 billion to help farmers recover from disasters. Most recently, crop insurance payments were among the first meaningful aid arriving to the areas along the East Coast that were devastated by hurricanes in 2024. Approximately $800 million of hurricane insurance protection and wind index endorsement payments were sent out quickly and far exceeded what policyholders paid for the coverage. With the help of crop insurance, farmers in communities where regional disasters have occurred are beginning to recover from damages caused by Mother Nature in the recent past. In other words, crop insurance is working exactly as it was designed.
The Crop Insurance Convention also championed the investments needed to ensure crop insurance remains affordable and available to all farmers and ranchers.
Crop insurers have never stopped working to improve and strengthen the crop insurance program. More than 30 new products have been rolled out since the introduction of the 2018 Farm Bill. These additions have included expanded coverage for livestock and pasture land and a variety of protection enhancements for the nation's specialty crop coverages, all reflecting the industry and USDA's ongoing effort to address emerging agriculture needs through enhanced risk management options.
Again, that's Scott Arnold, chair of National Crop Insurance Services. Chad Smith reporting.
That's our show for today. This has been the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halvorson. On behalf of Lorrie Boyer and myself, thank you for tuning in.
To get more information on the topics you heard today, visit AgNet West at agnetwest.com. You can also stay connected by following us on our social media at AgNet West on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Also look for Sabrina Halvorson on Facebook, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast by searching for AgNet West on your podcast app. Thank you for listening to the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. AgNet West Radio Network, your primary choice for agriculture news.